Great Formica top desk and a high-back swivel chair. I sat next to the frosted window in a pool of afternoon light, methodically, plainly, as was specified in the rules. I told him about the events in the backseat of the car. While I confessed, I sat beside myself on the next chair, looking into the fuzzy light through the scallop glass on the window. I was 18. He was 43, maybe 44. Bishop Gary Lawrence leaned back in the swivel chair. His lips began to move beneath his brush-like mustache. "Let me tell you a story," he said. Gary Lawrence told me about a school bus driver who every day on his route traversed a hazardously steep hill and a set of railroad crossings. Up one side of the hills, he piloted his bus and then safely down the other and across the tracks. Up one side, down the other, across the tracks, every day without incident. One morning, with his bus full of school children and running just a few minutes late, the driver felt his brakes fail just as he crested the hill. At the bottom of the hill, he saw a herd of goats in the road and the gates on the railroad tracks closing. Without a moment to spare, and yet without any panic, the bus driver took his foot off the gas, pressed the clutch, downshifted into first gear, and pulled on the emergency brake, bringing the bus full of children safely to rest just yards from the herd of goats and the railroad crossing. A policeman who witnessed the incident rushed to see that everyone was okay. "How did you do it?" the astonished policeman asked. "Well, you see," said the bus driver, "every day when I drive my route and I bring my bus over the hill, I rehearse what it is that I should do if the brakes on my bus should fail. In my mind, I imagine taking my foot off the gas, pressing the clutch, downshifting into first, pulling the emergency brake, and bringing the bus full of children safely to stop just yards from the crossing gates. Today, when I had to put my plan into action, I was prepared." "And so you see," said my Bishop Gary Lawrence, "I want you to think of yourself as that bus driver. Practice in your mind the steps you will take to stop yourself if you feel your brakes failing, so that you can prevent this kind of situation from ever happening again. If you prepare, you will be able to stay in control." I thanked Gary Lawrence for his counsel. I shook his hand, walked methodically down the church hallway to the parking lot, started my car, and drove home. Nothing inside me felt any better for confessing. In fact, what I felt in his office was what I felt in the backseat of the car that August night. Nothing. Nothing at all. What I did not know how to say then was that the story was all wrong. What if my body was not a bus with brakes that sometimes failed, hurtling me thrilled and giddy along with the onrush of some kind of sex? What if instead I was just a goat at the bottom of the hill, nosing about in the blackberries, not entirely aware of my surroundings, not quick enough to know what to do when the brakeless bus of sex came hurtling down the hill towards me? Or what if I was just a child on the bus and sex was like school, a compulsory education I never signed up for? Or what if I was like the policeman standing back and watching sex happen, a disastrous collision I had no power to stop? Or what if I was a mighty freight train steaming ahead towards my own horizon and sex was the runaway bus that kept crossing my path? What if the problem of sex always came uninvited, time and again, fleets of someone else's buses always losing their brakes and me frozen in the roadway? What if it was always someone else's thrilling hurdle, rushing headlong into the inert matter of my body? It took a long time for me to realize that the story was all wrong, a long time for me to be able to ask these questions. It was only after my mind had caught hold of the corners of dim memories about the neighbor girl's father and the neighbor boy on the street, catching me in the middle of the street, all that it was I had not been feeling in the back seat. Then slowly I began to piece together an understanding of what the problem had been, why it had always felt inevitable and unchosen, something unavoidable to be avoided at all costs. I began to understand why my body felt like cold luggage, not at all like a pearl on a golden chain, but rather more like a millstone, a constant reminder that my fate was always to be drowned. In the story I want to tell, there are no more drownings. I am waiting in the parking lot behind the church under the arc of a street lamp. I see my 16-year-old self leave the office of the stake president. I see myself hurry down the steps, my shoulders curled. Would you like to go for a drive? I ask her. I hand her the keys. My 16-year-old self gets into the front seat, takes the wheel, rolls down the window, and hollers, her dark hair blowing. We are driving a muscle car, with shiny orange paint, and an 8-cylinder engine. On the radio, we hear Heart, the Wilson sisters, Stevie Nicks. We drive the long boulevards from the Orange Grove Hills down to the big industrial beaches bordered by power plants, concrete piers, giant piles of boulders, and long stretches of empty parking lot. The air is damp and salty and smells like mollusks. We sit on the hood of the car and watch fires burn on the beach in great pits. Then we walk out on the pier and watch the waves heave themselves on shore. Maybe we drink a Diet Coke. Standing 20 feet above the heaving black ocean, not putting my arm around her, standing side by side, I tell my 16-year-old self, it is not a donut. It is not a rose. It is not a plank of wood. I can tell you that story later. It is not a bus without brakes. It is not a pearl on a golden chain, nor is it a millstone. It is neither a fragile treasure nor a heavy burden. It is nothing that can be damaged, taken, lost, or given away. It is not an it. You, your body, you are not an object lesson. How badly I want you to know that after many years of confusion, she'll come home to a house she chose herself, with a man she chose herself. A man whose body does not scare her, a man who does not dream of owning her. She will share a bed with him. She will go to bed wearing her own name. 2 daughters in sweaty pajamas. Yeah, you're sweaty sometimes. Will dream sovereign dreams in their bedrooms down the hall. Doves will roost on the power lines, and hummingbirds will wet their beak in the split fruit on her orange trees. The neighborhood roses will sit undisturbed atop their woody stems, fascicles tight with promise, or blousy and exhausted from the expense of their perfume, unashamed. On those nights, I want to tell her, if the stars align and the girls stay asleep in their beds, and memory does not rattle at the windows, she will feel how it's supposed to feel. Like a state of levitation, like flying, like concentrating and letting go, she will feel. For a few seconds, she will be in another place, that place we reach when we finally come home to our bodies and find ourselves for the first time ready to travel. That is what I want her to know, my 16-year-old Mormon girl self, but she cannot know it yet.